Peace and Black Power families, Brother IJ Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. Family, we are really trying to step it up and expand our scope and make sure that we're not just educating you about what's going on here in the United States, because we have a whole world that we occupy as African and New African people. And we want to try to make sure that we expand our scope to a global consciousness. In line with that, we got a brother on here today, family. That's a bad man. And you know, in our vernacular, that means he's doing his thing in really good and wholesome and African ways. This is a brother I met virtually through he put out a call. We'll probably talk a little bit about it later. He put out a call about going to start a brotherhood. I kind of chimed in, other people chimed in, and the brother made it happen. We'll talk about it later, but that's how I met him. And this brother's a community organizer. He's a Pan Africanist. He holds position with Honorable Marcus Garvey's organization. He also is the I believe he's the executive director of the Gullah Nation of North America and the Black Star Action Network International. He's doing really wonderful on the ground and virtual work. He's covering both sides of that coin. I want to introduce, now this is a brother I know his brother Mansa, but I want to give his I believe the correct name is Chief Foday Ajamu Mansaray. We share, by the way, the same middle name. When I changed my names, my middle name is Ajamu as well. I don't know if I ever shared that with you, good brother. Let's bring our brother on, man, so we can hear what he got to say. Peace, brother.
Peace, brother. How you doing? Beautiful day.
Oh, man, I'm well. I'm glad to see you, and I'm glad we had this opportunity, you know. For those who don't know, our brother is in Sierra Leone. So we have a significant time difference. Here it's about 1:07. I believe where our brother is about 6:07 p.m.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's a major difference. If y'all can understand, over here we're doing a little late lunch. Brother there might be doing an early dinner, just to give you a sense of the time difference. Brother, I'm glad you could make time for us. I'm going to throw up our questions so you can see them and the audience can see them as well. For those who are tuning in live, we thank you for joining us. We want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, Harlem Liberation School. Let people know. Don't sit on all this goodness. Don't save all this goodness for yourself. Share it. That's the African way. Share the meal so everybody can eat. Also, we want to begin with our questions. The first question, let me put up our title, our general title, Chief Foday Ajamu Mansaray. We're talking about Pan Africanism. We're going to be talking about some of his own activities and what's going on in Sierra Leone. You know, so we can have a consciousness beyond Trump and Harris and what's going on here. The question I like to start with, good brother, is how did you come into your political consciousness? The stories that we hear are always so diverse and interesting. So how would you say that you got in on the road of Black consciousness, my brother?
I always sum it up like my mother was already she already had a vibe. She already moved in a real African kind of way. Coming from South Carolina, she already had like a little stank on her, right? So, you know, she taught us to be proud of being Black just in general. Just to, you know that we Black people and be proud of that. But beyond the household, beyond the mother and, you know, the family and everything like that, I got involved in community organizing. In 1999, my mother introduced me to an organization, and I cut my teeth. I did about 6 months of organizing, steady, in the community level, canvassing, knocking on doors. I remember I received some training from AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps had some training within the community that they offered us as, you know, as organizers. It was all volunteer work. They had a little stipend, but, you know, for the most part, it felt good to be able to be a part of change. And then later on, you know, I revisited my education. Back in the day, I was caught up in the streets originally, early on, and going in prison, getting out of prison, and going through that process also, I would say, politicized me. Understanding my status as a Black man within the legal system, and really going through that and having an opportunity to learn from that perspective as well. I did a little time in the early 2000s, and during that time, I had an awakening. I had the opportunity to read Garvey's work. I had the opportunity to get into the prison libraries, to get into, you know, the lit, so to speak, you know, and learn about the different struggles and the different strategies that our people have been engaged in and whatnot. And so, you know, I came home heated. I came home ready to do more organizing, but I came home with a more politically sharp idea about how to direct that organizing. So originally I cut my teeth as a community organizer, and then eventually while in prison, I was awakened and started my path towards, you know, consciousness.
Man, I appreciate that answer. And I hope when we do these interviews, those of you watching live or in the later recorded version, pay close attention, because when you hear all the different avenues that people use to get into consciousness, you're going to see how diverse we are and that there's no one way into consciousness. Now, once we get into consciousness, there's some best practices, right? But people get into this through reading, people have gone to prison, people have been robbed, people have stumbled into somebody, went to the wrong place, and they stumbled to a meeting and somebody, I mean, the stories you hear are really, really fascinating. So I always like to start with that. We thank you for that, brother. Now, you mentioned, I believe you mentioned Pan Africanism.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there's several important figures in our history that contributed to Pan-African thought and practice. One of the towering figures, particularly as comes to us through Jamaica and through the States and through my hometown of Harlem, is the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Could you, for those who don't know, because he's unfortunately, like many of our greats, he still does not get, in my humble opinion, the immense credit he deserves for what he's able to accomplish. Could you talk about the importance of Mr. Garvey to Pan-Africanism and to Black people, New Africans in general, and even the role that you play in the organization as well?
Absolutely. First of all, I'll say that just like you said, you know, Marcus Garvey was one of many. He was one of many liberation strategists and organizers, freedom fighters from our community, from the black race, that stood up for all of us. It wasn't just about Jamaica when he stood up. It wasn't just about, himself or his family or some money when he stood up. Marcus Garvey was a race man, what they used to call race man. Everything that he did every day was about trying to find ways to improve the struggle and the conditions of the race. And so, Marcus Garvey himself, I believe in the broader scheme of things in our struggle, when you look at it historically and you're able to look at, let me say, the 19th century, the 1800s, and you can see all the great predecessors of 20th century Pan-Africanism. You can see the liberation struggles that took place in the 1800s. Then you can look back and you can see how the struggles in the 1700s led up to the struggles in the 1800s. And so I think that Garvey was able to embrace and learn from so many different avenues, from not only study, but also from his own experience of traveling and living a black oppressed worker man's life, a poor student's life at the same time, at a time in the world where everything was colonized. So Marcus Garvey was a visionary. Some spiritualists would say that he's a prophet because he foreseen certain things. His analysis was so sharp that he was able to foresee the direction of the world at the time. And so I believe Marcus Garvey was the greatest embodiment of Pan-Africanism in the 20th century. And I believe that he stood on the shoulders of those who came before him, and they stood on the shoulders of those who came before them. And so I think that speaks to who I am now and the kind of work that I do now. Me personally, I've always been proud of being black, just like that. Even when I was a young boy running around acting crazy, I was raised first. I was sensitive to us, and everything like that. But the political education that I was able to acquire came through the process of learning about people like Garvey. And so for me, and it's just to go back, to my own process. When I spent that time in prison, I got involved with the study groups in the yard. I got involved with, maintaining the inmate library. Some of us used to buy books from African World Books and from different sources, Third World Book Press. We used to buy the books, and when they come in, most of the time back then, the COs didn't understand what we was reading. Now a lot of the books might be on the hit list. You can't get them. But back then we had Blueprint to Black Power, we had the Google, we had the SAFO, and we had study groups around these. We would read these books and pass these books around and have profound conversations in the yard where everybody else is lifting weights and running. We'd be on the bleachers chopping it up. And so through that political education process, I was able to learn about a lot of different figures. And the one who really gravitated to me more than anybody, I would say, was Malcolm X. And then after Malcolm, it was Garvey, because I seen Garvey like the most influential and yet the most downplayed. Like I see Garvey like with Malcolm, there's no doubt. You say Malcolm X, freedom fighter, but with Garvey, people start talking crazy. And so I kind of looked at Garvey like, man, it's not proper to diss the brother for any reason, because he didn't have to come over there, and we didn't have to embrace him. That it was a genuine Pan-African movement that formed because Garvey decided to create the organization that would lead to us having men of power, us having some black power, us having some black unity all around the world. He didn't see it just as a local thing, a national thing. It was a global race consciousness that Marcus Garvey put out there. And so I think I appeal to that more than anything. Even though I'm from the United States, it just hit me like, yo, if Africa ain't free, none of us gonna be free nowhere. Like, when Garvey say the Chinese man, China is for China, it makes sense to me. Like, yo, I ain't got no right to go to China and tell them how to run their government or how to raise their kids or none of that. That's not my business as a black man. But they also don't got no business in my affairs. And so I understood what Garvey was doing when he was demarking us racially, playing the race game that that they serve out, playing the hand that that they dealt us, and arriving to these conclusions back then, and being able to see that it has to be race or African nationalist based, not socialist, not Christian. It has to be based on us as a people. And so later on, I got involved in political organizing.
Now wait, Chief, you jumping ahead just a little bit, and I want to make sure that we get all this as much in as we can. So pardon me for interrupting you, but I do have a question. While we on the subject of Garvey, we got some absolute, in my opinion, clowns and misinformed, God bless them, brothers and sisters who are arguing that Garvey wasn't a Pan-Africanist.
That's crazy.
How do you respond to that nonsense?
That's crazy. Even myself, I like to say that Garvey never self-identified as a Pan-Africanist. And there's a reason why he didn't. There's a reason why Garvey didn't say, I'm a Pan-African like them guys. And when you go back and you understand the evolution of Pan-Africanism, you realize that he was a Pan-Africanist. He just wasn't identifying with those who was identifying with the term at the time because they was opposed to him politically. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, he wasn't going to say he was a Pan-Africanist if he felt like those who were using the term at the time, like W.B. Du Bois and others, were opposed to his program for the race. But if you look at what Pan-Africanism is, in terms of an ideology, and in terms of an objective, what we're all striving towards. If you say you're a Pan-Africanist, you should be striving towards a common objective, no matter what side you're coming from. You can't deny that Marcus Garvey's program was a Pan-Africanist program.
That's right. I agree wholeheartedly, my brother. It's a shame that, we have to have dialogues, and we have to have dialogues sometimes with brothers and sisters that disagree. But sometimes I feel like it's unfortunate that it feels like you're taking 100 steps backwards to have these type of conversations that we should be historically clear on. We should should be. That's almost if this was a religious conversation, to assert that he's not Pan-African would be almost blasphemous. That's almost like how could you even say something like that?
Sense. It don't make sense.
Makes no sense.
Why I said the evolution of the
That's
thing.
Right.
Right. Pan-Africanism as ideology and movement was already in formation before the term was coined. You understand?
Right. That's
and
right.
So not only that, but even the people who was using the term that was coined, they was building a different strategy of Pan-Africanism. They believed in a different way of going about developing Pan-Africanism than what Garvey did. Garvey preferred the African nationalist model. Let's build a government. Let's build a global superpower. And you don't hear that coming from the early Pan-Africanists. They were they were less aggressive, and they was less nationalistic about their Pan-Africanism. But later on, after Garvey passed away, you get to that 1945 conference. Them boys was like, man, we want state power, we want nation state, we want government, we want to get them out of our countries. And that's when they was able to rely on Garvey's ideals and be able to implement some nation building. And so we got to understand that about Garvey. Garvey was a Pan-Africanist, but Garvey was a nationalist. He was a Pan-African nationalist. He wanted one nation for all of us.
That's right. That's right. And also, it's very important. Unfortunately, the Honorable Marcus Garvey wasn't alive to hear it and bear witness. But Du Bois eventually had to submit to the fact that Mr. Garvey was right. And that takes a lot, family. A lot of us don't do that. He lived so long that he was able to go in many different directions, right?
Yeah.
And really had a long period of time of life to really say, you know what? The brother was right. He renounced his American citizenship, said to hell with communism, and went to Ghana, and actually was partially advising Kwame Nkrumah in the building of his nation. So it shows that our people have the capacity to say
there was connections.
We were wrong, and yes, and let's build together. So I like that part of Du Bois' story. Of course, there's other parts that's troublesome too. Yeah, but that's a good piece,
Do you know that Amy Jacques Garvey, they called on her to go to Du Bois and bring Du Bois to the conference. because they wanted to make sure that there was unity all around the board, because they were coming back to Africa after 1945 to bang it out.
On
They was
fire.
crashing out.
Yeah.
It was
Yes,
crashing
sir.
out regardless. And so so they wanted to make sure that, you know, that was in place. Even if you look, Dr. John Henry Clark was in Ghana very early on. We was coming to Ghana instantly. Once we knew we had a Pan-African state and a leader that we had his ear and he understood who he was, spent some time with us in the States. Oh man, we was coming over. And
That's
with
right.
WB Du Bois, you gotta understand, like a lot of people, even myself, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of playing the versus game. You know, Garvey versus Du Bois. I'm guilty of it too. You know, but at the same time, I'm realistic enough to realize that when we're talking about the intellectual mind power of black men, you know, I've read the Philadelphia Negro. You understand? I've read Du Bois's work, so I understand the intellectual power of the man. He wasn't just a political speaker or nothing like that. He actually was a genius. And so, like you said, it takes a certain kind of person to say, you know what, I was wrong about dude. To correct yourself.
That's right.
You got to respect it.
And it's a lesson in that. For those of y'all watching, there's a lesson in that. Let us get to the place where we don't have to be damn near 100 years old to get it, where we can really say, you know, me and brother or sister disagree on this, but I agree with them on that. Let's work together, even if we disagree. Let's understand where we come from and let's work together. We don't have to have complete agreement to work together to understand the larger mission. So there's a lesson in that with those two brothers. And also, we know the government certainly would have every interest in trying to exacerbate any tension, perceived or real. You know, so that's important. Now, Brother Chief, I'm gonna call you Chief for the show, my brother. Okay, if that's all right with you.
No problem.
You mentioned that you're from the States, but you live in Sierra Leone. So some people that's gonna watch the recorded version gonna be like, "Whoa, is the brother visiting? Is he a tourist? What's he doing in Sierra Leone if he lived in the United States?" Could you first frame it for us by telling us where you're originally from in the States, and then what led you to repatriate to Sierra Leone?
All right, no doubt. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I was born right outside of Philadelphia in a city called Chester. I was raised in York, Pennsylvania, between York, Pennsylvania and South Carolina. So my mother was from South Carolina, and when I was growing up, we still was traveling back and forth, even lived down there a couple of years going to school. So that's my basic background in terms of like where I'm from over there in the States. Spent most of my time in York, PA, very small city, not too far from Baltimore, about 50 miles from Baltimore. And so what led me to coming to Sierra Leone, it was actually me getting involved and active with Pan-African organizing. In around 2006, I got involved in local organizing in York, and we began the campaign against the anti-gang initiative, the federal anti-gang initiative. It was allowing shot spotter technology to go up in the community, where they were spending millions of dollars for that instead of for programs that could, you know, reduce crime and reduce desperation in the community. They were spending millions on naval warship technology, and also they were also working to racially profile everybody based on how we dress in urban attire and making everybody a potential gangster, and then implementing the stop and frisk based on that. And you know, I was itching for some action at the time anyway, and the city needed a wake up call, so we began to organize around it in our city. At that time, I also got connected with organization that had tentacles all around the world, that had organization here in Sierra Leone, organization in the UK, organization in France. So I was introduced to Pan-African organizing through the Uhuru movement. I had reached out to a bunch of organizations because I was ready to get busy. I'm like, yo, I want to like converge.
Is that brother Yes Satala?
Yeah, O'Malley Satala, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, yes.
Yes, sir. So in 2007, I started to look for organization like a home. I said organizers should belong to an organization. Can't be organized and you don't belong to no organization. That's like being Christian, you ain't got no church. Muslim, you ain't got no mosque. Organizers should have an organization that they belong to. Get organized. And so I just reached a point in my own development where I was like, man, I'm ready to confront some of this racism and confront some of this imperialism. And I reached out to different organizations. I never forget it, man. I got everybody's email, Nation of Islam, all the different groups, UNIA, and I sent one email out to everybody. The only organization that responded to me was the Uhuru movement at the time. And they was having an event in Philadelphia. It's 2007, May 2007. And they was bringing a brother from Sierra Leone to Philadelphia to talk to us about blood diamonds and the reality of their war and their struggle in Sierra Leone. I left York, went to Philly for the event, met dude, eventually joined the organization to have access to that kind of population, the people. Mm. And I built camaraderie from there with the people in Sierra Leone. They had a very serious organization here of young folks who had been victims of the war, but they were now organizing themselves based on being Pan Africanists. So they felt as though to build unity and restore peace in the country, it was best to do it as Pan Africans. And so we got connected with this group, and I built camaraderie for about 6 years, 7 years, and then eventually some of them was running for parliament here on the basis of being Pan Africanists, and they reached out to me. I had resigned from the Uhuru movement. Like I was there for about 2 years, and then eventually they resigned. But the people here reached back out to me and was like, "Hey man, we need your support." And so Basani, my organization, began to support them, and eventually they lost the election, but I was invited to come. And for me, it was like a dream come true. I'm one of the brothers that wanted to be in Africa. I see the strategic value of having some of us here. And I always wanted to be here. I just always want to try to escape America, so to speak. I don't like being there too much. It drives me crazy being there. But here I got a peace of mind. I discovered my purpose, and everything is laid back where I'm at. So the struggle brought me here, just like the struggle took Che Guevara to Cuba.
Okay. Very, again, man, as I'm hearing your story, very interesting, very interesting. And it's also, it makes me very thankful for the brothers and sisters that created these wonderful organizations, that you were able to have a home, somebody that could reach out to you, give you that foundational knowledge, that community organized experience. So that the building of organizations is very key. It's very important. Now, could you, for those of us, I've never been out the country as of yet. I hope to next year get to the motherland, God willing. Could you describe for us, I guess, the advantages and maybe some of the challenges of living in Sierra Leone, but also some of that, because I know you're active, brother. So I know wherever you are, you're active. So also, what are some of the activities you're involved in Sierra Leone?
Okay. So some of the advantages are living in a country where white supremacy is not ruling the government. We got other issues, but it's not that. You still got the police. The pig is a pig, but it's not white supremacy driving them. It's something else. It might be poverty. It might be desperation. It might be ego, power struck, but it won't be because you're black. And so just having that, for me, it meant so much. As you see, I'm a dark-skinned brother, man. I'm 6'6" in height. All my life growing up, I always felt like I was getting singled out, especially when it comes to police or enemies or something like that. I always felt like, get the big black one, And so just being here makes me feel a lot better inside. Secondly, the food, the beauty of being here in Africa. And thirdly, one of the things that made me come at the end of the day was these brothers lost their election, and they asked me to come, and we were supposed to be working towards building a Pan-African party here in this country, so that they would have a stronger foundation for vying for power here. And so that's what I was like, hell yeah, I'm down. I definitely want to be a part of something like that. So when I came, that was the commitment. But since then, I've done so much more than what was originally intended. And, every month, every week, every day, I find more value in being here. A lot of the problems that we hear about and we see on the media, they're raw here. You get to smell the trash here. You get to see the handicaps here. It's not just television. And so for me, I think I kind of thrive off of that. You know, it kind of gives me adrenaline, energy to keep serving. So the advantages for me is living in Africa, just period. When you come here, you understand, like, if I could live here, you would prefer to live here. Some of the disadvantages or challenges is the technology, of course, the infrastructure, of course. Right now, if these people decide to cut the lights off, I'm going to go dark right now. Boom. Um, and then also you have neo-colonialism, which still exists. You have um, governments in place and government officials in place that are corrupted. They have no interest in truly serving the genuine interests of the people, but they're in power, and they abuse that power. And so you still have those challenges. Just like you see it in our communities. You see black cop, black cop, black cop. Yeah, same thing. You give a brother some power, and they start acting like massa. Um, and so you got that here too. And so in the midst of that, some of the activities that we've done here is we began to organize the Black Star Action Network International here all the way back in 2013. So Basani, what we call it when you put all the words together as an acronym, is an international grassroots Pan-African organization. We're basically more of a cadre formation of people who have been putting in the work, like yourself. You're there in Harlem. I'm here in Freetown. There's other brothers like Brother Shakara, and his wife up in UK. We got people like Baba Singor over in DC, elders. So we're like a group of Pan-Africanists who's already done the work to belong to the circle. And then we try to find ways to create programs and activities that will help the people no matter where we're at, that we can implement it anywhere. And so we come up with a particular kind of program. We started a program called Tools and Seeds Program. That's for farming, to fight food insecurity and things like that. You can do the food gardening over there in the States. You can even do farming in the States. You got so much land out there that's not being farmed. Same thing over here. We can literally grow our own food. And so some of the techniques that we teach the people here, they never had access to. So we teach them how to do it, but along Pan-African principles. How to do community farming. Then we also do Be Clean campaign, where we advocate for cleanliness, not only of the physical environment and the body, but also of the mind, of the spirit. And so we do international cleanups every year. We mobilize different groups all around the world. Last time we had 17 groups mobilize on the same day and clean up trash in their own community and go out there with the bullhorns and with the banners and let people know, hey, we got to clean our community up too. So we did that. We do that kind of activism. Right now, we have a program called the Mosiah Academy Leadership Institute, which is an educational program. We plan to teach Pan-Africanism and provide leadership training. So now we're taking the programs that we were doing and going to centralize them into an educational program. It'll be a 12-month program. Anybody who enters it and completes it will have an operational level of Pan-African grassroots community organizing skills.
Nice, man. When you talked about farming, I was teaching this political education class I teach every Thursday. And we were talking about geography. And some of the people, the brothers and sisters, didn't understand. Yo, I hated geography in school. Now you're going to hit us with the geography, political education class, blah, blah. And I had to explain to them, man, geography is the foundation of understanding migration patterns, why civilizations developed the way they developed, why there's certain wars and certain animosities in certain places. But one of the facts I hit them with is that Africa, we think of Africa, gold, oil, diamonds, but Africa has 65% of the world's arable land.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, fertile land right there, 65%. That means there's a lot of development we can do with the soil in Africa. And it's something I don't hear as many people talk about. So when you mentioned the farming, man, that just hit me. Like, that's an important piece right there.
Yeah. They don't want us as Africans from the United States to look to Africa for our solutions. That's what our enemy and those who oppose the Pan-African vision want. They don't want our people to stop looking at them for solutions and start looking at Africa for the solutions. That's what they want. But
That's
Africa
right.
has the solutions. You know, right now, if me and you want to get some land and grow enough food to import into New York, right now it's practically possible. There's people doing it. So they don't want us to think along those lines, though. They want us to think along the lines of distrust, along the lines of fear. You know what I mean? And so,
Mm-hmm.
lastly, here, what we're doing here, lastly, just before we go to the next question, is since 2017, we realized that they wasn't having African Liberation Day here. And myself and other people came together and said, man, let's start organizing African Liberation Day as a time during the year that we can put all differences aside, come together in one place, bring each other up to speed, and commemorate. And so from 2017, we've been doing African Liberation Day every year under the auspices of what we call the Pan African Coalition. The Pan African Coalition is about 13 Pan African organizations within this country that make up basically the body of Pan Africanism here. And
Mm-hmm.
so, Basani, my organization, our organization, we're right at the table. We're right in the midst of this. And we're planning now to intensify the struggle by organizing Pan Africans all across the country into a single mass movement.
Now, brother, you're also. I had another question just off the cuff. You also have another organization. Is it the Gullah
Yes,
Nation? I may
sir.
be saying it wrong, good brother. Forgive
Yes, sir.
me.
Gullah Nation of North America.
Thank you. Could you tell us, for those who don't know, what we mean by Gullah and what that organization is about?
Yes, sir. So Gullah or Gullah Geechee people um, are what people define as a subgroup of African Americans. If you Google it, it's going to say they're a subgroup of African Americans. And they'll say that we're from the southeast coastal area, from the Sea Islands, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. And they're basically saying we got our own traditions and cultures that we preserve that include many Africanisms, many things that have African origins. We still practice and do, even some of the language, which is a distinct Creole language. So the Gullah Nation of North America is an organization that was created in order to resolve one of history's problems as it relates to the Gullah Geechee people. You from Harlem, so you know about what's the brother name? They call him the Godfather of Harlem. What's his name? Bumpy
Uh,
Johnson.
Bumpy
So
Johnson, yes, sir.
so let's use Bumpy Johnson for example. Bumpy Johnson from Charleston. He's a Gullah Geechee man. But
Mm.
back in the day, they was chasing black folk out of the South. And we were seeking refuge in places like Harlem, in places like Philadelphia, West Philly, right? And so you got this population of people who, had they not been chased off of their lands, out of their region, they would speak different today. They would probably prefer different diet of food today. Their spirituality might be a little different.
Mm.
But because of the genocide of the Klan, the lynch terror, young people, as soon as they would get of age, they would run up north. They would run up north. So the South lost like a whole 2 generations of young people to the north. Those young people went up north, and a lot of them never went down south because of the trauma. They got cut off from their roots. And so we realized that there's a lot of Gullah Geechee descendants who have never stepped foot in this territory that they identify as the corridor, only because of the genocide of us being chased out, being forcefully displaced during the Great Migration periods. And so our organization seeks to rectify that. It seeks to create a basis of identity that's inclusive to those who were separated by migration, like you were just saying, geography. Gullah Geechee people have been getting separated from our families since slavery times. But when you talk about the 1900s, the 2 Great Migration, we talk about more modern times. You look at Elijah Muhammad, he was a great migrator. You look at Malcolm X's father, he was a great migrator. When you look at people like even now, Professor James Small, his family is from Georgetown, South Carolina. He's a Gullah Geechee man. And so we have these identities that we usually don't give any currency, you know. But really, our ancestors created something that is unique and distinct, and today is recognized as an ethnicity. today recognized as a ethnic group of people that had their ethnogenesis right there on North American soil, but are clearly a distinct and unique people among the African population. And so I'm that. My mother is that. My family comes from that. My mother, she could talk a little bit of the Creole. She could talk the little twang and everything. Rice all the time. Just grew up in the culture. Because even though I was born up north, I was also up and down I-95 growing up because my mom was from down south. And so being exposed to that made me feel as though I am that too. You know, some people say, well, my granddaddy was a Gullah Geechee, but I ain't because I'm born in New York. Okay, fine. But the reality is that you're the descendant of your grandfather. And if your grandfather was a Zulu, you wouldn't say that. If your grandfather was a Yoruba or any other ethnicity that you respect, you wouldn't say that. And so, because your grandfather might have been a Gullah Geechee man from North Carolina somewhere, you got right to claim that identity. You got right to learn about that culture and embrace that heritage too. And so there was a lot being done to make us feel as though we didn't have that right. That only the people within a certain portion of the country geographically had that right. And it did not consider the fact that many of us had been forcefully displaced from our families and that we still remain family. And so we still got the right heritage, the right to claim the heritage. So the Gullah Nation of North America is for all the Gullah Geechee descendants spread across the United States of America.
That's nice, man. You know, as you were talking, it's making me think some of our people, quote unquote, living up north have been propagandized to hear when they hear Gullah Geechee, they see that as a negative term, that, you know, they're slow, you're backwards, you know, how we say country. And so a lot of people have abdicated the throne because they've been taught that that is something bad or negative. And that's really
Yeah.
shameful. So I'm sure with the organization, y'all do a lot of political education, let people know, because I see you always posting about that.
Yeah.
So that's a good piece right there too.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
we got about 15 minutes, good brother. I was hoping we could talk about this. How I met this brother here, the Jikola Kumbunga,
Yeah, man.
the brotherhood.
Bunga. Yes, sir.
Could you talk
So,
about that? And I'm gonna show a flyer at some point that's gonna have an upcoming event. Maybe we could talk about as well as you talk.
all right, no problem. So, Jichola Kimbunga is a term or word that's in Swahili. What it means, what it interprets into is the eye of the whirlwind. When we were just talking about Marcus Mosiah Garvey earlier, and Garvey gave a speech where he talked about returning in the whirlwind. He said, "Look for me in the whirlwind. You know, I'll be draped in the red, black, and green. I'll be with, you know, thousands of the ancestors who died during slavery and colonialism from Africa and the Americas." Like, you know, Garvey was always real creative about how he expressed his you know, his Pan Africanism. And so, building on that concept, Garvey said he said it doesn't matter if it would take 100 to 200 years, he will return in the whirlwind. He said that over 100 years ago. So we believe that this current generation is basically the whirlwind generation. That this is Kimbunga. This is the generation that Garvey foreseen. And if you look at it right now with what's happening in this region, the Sahel, you see a return to Pan-African being built at the state level. And so Garveyism is becoming more and more relevant to return and get a better understanding of. So Jichola Kimbunga came out of the desire and really recognizing the need for Black men to rebuild and restore our brotherhood. And so if you can remember, brother, I was here in Sierra Leone, and I'm like, man, where the brothers at? So I made a post like, man, where the brothers at, man? We need to build something that can keep us, you know, keep us going. And I remember you came on, you was like, man, start the group. I said, all right, bet. Like, what's that, a challenge? We're gonna get it popping. And so, you know, that's how it happened, man. You know, we created a little group. We started organizing first. We keep a bi-weekly meeting now. It's been almost a year. We got some dynamic brothers who are sometimes during our meetings, we do presentations. We make sure that everybody knows what's going on. So For instance, if the Harlem Liberation School has something going on, then Baba has opportunity to let us know. We belong to 6, 7 different organizations apiece. We able to scatter the information and support the brother, and just maintain brotherhood. You know, sometimes we're not feeling too good, and we say, hey, man, I'm not feeling too good today, brother. And the brothers, hey man, you know, we're praying for you, man, and that alone make you feel better. So now we're talking about the fact that being a revolutionary in the world can be lonely without your comrades, without your brothers. And so this is a brotherhood established on the fact that we are the whirlwind. We recognize that it's us, that the I is our view. The way that we see this is exactly what our people need to see it as. And so what we've done since August is we've organized monthly roundtable discussions to enlighten the people about basically provide the people with some political education leading up to the election. We talked about Project 2025. We talked about the U.S. government versus Black people. We talked about the U.S. government and international policy. We talked about these things because we didn't want to dictate how people vote or if they vote, but the responsible thing for us to do as a body of Black men who are actively engaged and responsible, we said, well, let's give the people the real deal conversation. So at least they can go to that and they can extract the information and it can help them determine what kind of decision they're going to make, because that's what it boils down to. The people can't make decisions unless they're truly informed. They need to be properly informed about, you know, what they're engaging in, especially for young people who may have never voted, who can be easily swayed by emotions. You know, we've seen a lot of people trying to use fear to get people's votes. And so we just wanted to give them some information, you know, some real subtle information to make them think before they do anything. You know, so we create this African survival initiatives, and we got one coming up. It's going to be the post-elections round table. It's coming up on the 30th, I believe. And
30th, that's right.
Yeah, on the 30th, I believe. And you know, we're going to chop it up, but we're going to keep it going as well. I remember the first one, Baba IG. We talked about Project 2025 and beyond. And I remember you did a presentation on that. And we were talking about after the elections, what do we do? After the elections, what now? We were saying we're going to keep it rolling. We got to keep informing the community. We got to organize ourselves as Black people. We got to be beyond the brotherhood now. We got to reach the masses. So in a certain kind of way, Jichola Kimbunga has provided a spark that was much needed for some of us. And I believe that the brothers of Jichola Kimbunga are righteous, not only in you know, demeanor or words, but we really be the ones behind the scenes doing the work to try to make sure that this thing don't burn out. You know, and so that's what Jichola Kimbunga is, man. The brotherhood got people from the UK, from across the United States, West Africa. So it's not a nationalist thing. It's an internationalist body of people who seek to be a think tank, who seek to be a watchdog for the people.
That's right. And I think we're doing wonderful work. And I think it's gonna, and I think if anything, the real organizers, the real quote unquote revolutionaries, when times like this happen, Trump's in office, whatever he rolls out, we just gonna take what we already doing and amplify and
Yeah,
intensify it.
intensify. That's
That's
right.
all that's
That's
gonna
right.
happen. We gotta accelerate all of our plans because you know we coming probably up against some challenging times. So yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, my brother, your thoughts, though, your personal thoughts about now that this guy is in office. Do you think it's going to be a lot worse than it has been? You know, because people say, you know, white people obviously are white folk in power.
Yeah.
So if
It's
they can come to
possible.
Africa and enslave us, anything's possible. If
Oh
you think
yeah.
about it.
I think it's going to be hell for the liberals. I think it's going to be hell for the Democrats. I don't think it's going to be hell for all of us in the same kind of way. But I think that the Democrats and liberals want all of us to believe that we're going to catch the same hellfire. Um, because of course I see Trump retaliating. I see him coming back to, like, you know, because you just imagine they voted him out and then he got back to power. He got some get back. He got some get back on his mind. And so I was watching a interview the other day about the brother down in Haiti, barbecue, the brother who's leading the struggle down there. And he was saying that, the Democrats always have a hypocritical agenda. He said, but he was hoping that because Trump is in power now, and the Republicans in dealing with Haiti seem to be always straightforward. They don't hide. It is what it is. They mean what they say. They do what they say. It's never a slithering snake kind of thing. That he thinks that Trump will allow for the Haitians to solve their own problem, versus the Democrats who always want to be involved in making it worse. And when I thought about that, I'm like, the Democrats just sent the Kenyan police to Haiti to fight the same armed brothers and sisters that got armed by the United States government so they could try to overthrow a president that was duly elected. So they gave the guns to the so-called gangsters, and the only reason why they're gangsters right now is because they won't return the guns.
Right. Right. America's
That's what's going on right now. So the reason why I say that is because I feel kind of the same. I think that when things get worse, it could be a positive thing for us in the struggle, because our people right now, I believe if Kamala would have won, we'd be asleep already. But right now, people still on point. They're still on their toes. They're waiting for whatever's next. So I think that in general, for the community, we're more aware when we know what we're dealing with, and we can put our guards up, and we can say, well, what can we do now? So I think in the next 4 years, we'll be stronger than what we would have been as a people, because we got to fight a stronger enemy.
Yeah, man. The wolf versus the fox. I think Brother Malcolm was right about that, man. The wolf versus the fox. Sometimes it's better to know the devil that's telling you straight up that he's trying to exterminate you versus the one that's playing the violin and taking you to dinners and giving you awards and all this type of crap. Yeah, that's true indeed. That's true indeed. Well, go ahead, my brother.
I've been watching it too, and I understand that they say 87% of the black vote went one way, and that in terms of the election, what really pushed it over in terms of Trump getting the popular vote was the Hispanics. The Hispanics, they came through, they voted almost 50%, 50-50. And it's just showing you that there's different political dynamics that's unfolding in this century that we've never had to operate under, we never had to contend with. And we really got to get ourselves organized. I was talking to my wife just the other day, like, the Black nationalist movement in the United States of America has to evolve into a more Pan-African force within the United States of America. That the Africans from the different African places, the different countries, we need to have a single foundation over there that we can work on. As soon as we separate ourselves, as we're born in America, so we got our own interests over here, I think we undermine the actual long-term agenda. Some of the Africans who make it to America are among the strongest and most privileged Africans, that make it over there. And these are really the ones that we should be able to connect with and build a national unity with right there while we're all in that same country together. So I think that there's going to be an increased period of white nationalism, and there's going to be also a reactionary Black nationalism that's going to emerge with the potential of becoming a revolutionary nationalism if we grab it and do what we got to do with it.
Well said, Chief. We have a comment. Well, I guess Simmerin Reed. Yeah, but this is the same Trump who called Haiti and Africa shit old countries. So let me just say this, family, real quick. Those watching live or recorded. I was taught by some elders, one of them being the Black Power General, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, and he said, we never let the white man off the hook. He was very clear, always hold the line. Even as we criticize our community, we got to grow, we got to have self-empowerment. Never let them off the hook. So we understand who Trump is and what he represents. Is when Brother Chief was speaking, he was giving you, it's a complex thing. It's not a very simplistic, you can either or it. You have to really understand the different layers going on. So I
Yeah.
see what you're
Yeah.
saying, but hopefully y'all understand what the brother was saying as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
saying we
Also,
support Trump, but we
no, not at
saying,
all.
right?
Not
Yeah,
at all. Not at all. We don't. Look, let me
yeah.
tell you, right? The United States government is not what we're supporting here. The reality is that no matter who it would have been, we would have had to be in our position. But the reason why I went right to Haiti with it is because, like you said, I'm in Sierra Leone. I'm seeing things a little different. I'm seeing it from West African perspective, and the brother was in Haiti seeing it from his perspective. And I think that the international community, the international world, is looking at Trump like who they would have rather dealt with versus Kamala, and for different reasons. In Africa, they said, okay, he's a racist. He tells you he's a racist, but he's not trying to turn you gay. He's not pushing a homosexual agenda on your country. So people were very offended by Kamala coming to Africa and pushing the homosexual agenda. Very offended. You offend ordinary Africans once you start doing that. And so, some people just feel like they would rather deal with dude because he's exposed. It's easy to understand, who you're dealing with, as opposed to dealing with someone who's behaving like a friend. Now, right now, we have the AES going on, the Alliance of Sahel States, or called the AES, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. So people like me in West Africa are thinking, what is the policy going to be towards that now? Who is the best person to be in power that's going to respect the sovereignty of those nations, and who would continue to try to assassinate the leaders? So people are looking at it like there might be a better deal to just deal with an open enemy. You know what I mean? There's somebody who's faking me out, acting like a friend, that really got a worse plan for me. So people, I think the Democratic Party needs to really go back to the drawing board if it plans to be a serious force over the next 10 to 20 years. And for me, I think that it opens up a vacuum for us, particularly as the black political class. We really have to get on our shit right now too. Like we can really consolidate some power in America that could have an international impact right now if we know what we're doing. We really, really can. If we pick the right issues and we can humble our egos and strategize around a core leadership, we can win.
Yes, sir. It's and when you're talking, Chief, my mind goes into these historical. I make these like historical little connections, and like I'm thinking about this Wolf Fox piece, right? I'm thinking about how to this day black people love Robert F. Kennedy and his this guy's son that was now down with Trump. Okay, and I'm like, yo, Robert F. Kennedy was bugging Martin Luther King Jr., authorized him all over the country, had him followed ridiculously, family. And it's just, it amazes me how he makes a few appearances, shakes a few hands, kisses black babies, goes to the churches because he's running for president, and we just kind of forget that history. Like, so there's something to be said for, instance, Lyndon Baines Johnson was a racist segregationist, but he actually signed all the civil rights legislation. It wasn't Kennedy, it was Lyndon Baines Johnson. So it's interesting. This is why I say the politics can be a little more nuanced sometimes than we give it credit for. It's not as simplistic sometimes as we think, So that's a good point, Chief. Good point.
Yeah, I think it's very I think it's very complicated, especially for those of us who represent the radical black nationalist tradition.
That's right.
Like we have a political ideology and history that no other people in the world have as black nationalists within the United States of America. No African people have evolved the exact political ideals that we have. And so I think it's something unique and valuable that we bring to the table. Just like we can gain and benefit from other struggles and the ideals and the movements of other black people, I think that the African American or the black American population brings something very unique in terms of nation building, in terms of nationalist ideals, the kind of struggle that we've been engaged with our enemies in terms of right there behind enemy lines in the United States of America against that kind of power, against that kind of wealth, against those kind of, Europeans or whatnot, right? Um, it just it has broken many of us, but for those of us who've been able to sustain the blows, it's made us stronger. And so I think that now is really more the time to look at ourselves and see what direction Trump and whoever the leaders are trying to push that country into, and buck the system. We need to buck the system. I think now is really a time for us to build our own power base.
For those of you who missed it, when we were talking about Project 2025, and I'm proud of us that we did that. And we were very clear. It wasn't over nobody's head, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
We rolled out some things that we need to look at or think about, and we were all clear. So some of us looked at it a little differently, but we were all clear that the work continues, regardless to whom or what. The work continues. And
Yes,
if
sir.
anything, we have to accelerate the work and we have to expand it. We got to work harder and more effectively and efficiently now, but it doesn't change the work. Khaled used to say, I blame everything on the white man. He used to say, if I slip on a banana peel, it's the white man's fault.
It's the white man. Yeah, yeah.
That was his comical way of being clear on where this stuff emanates. We can be problematic ourselves, but he was always very clear on who was the arch enemy in terms of white supremacy, and that's very important to remember. And I'm glad I'm with a group of brothers that understand that.
Yeah,
that's
who
very
put us
clear.
here?
That's right, and never forget that.
Mm-hmm,
some of us may be agents with them and that type of thing, but in terms of the people who, the architects of this thing, who most benefit from it, is them, and we can never forget that.
Yeah,
very important.
Yeah. And
Look,
they're
man,
always there. They're always there strategizing. They're always
you
there
better believe
planning and pulling their resources and operating against our interests. Always, always.
That's right. Throwing the rock and hiding their hand, always. So listen, family, we are out of time. We want to thank Chief, man. Thank you for your time, brother. I know that you're probably getting ready to eat dinner right now.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you already know.
And we getting ready to talk about maybe a late lunch. It's crazy the time difference, man. But we appreciate you making time for us, brother. Gotta have you back. I'd like to have maybe a broadcast where we get more of the brotherhood on too, and we could all chop it up.
Yeah.
And thank you for all you do, brother. Keep pushing. And I think I'm gonna see you on Sunday.
Yeah, we got
to meet on Sunday, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, family. Those of you watching live, those who watch later recorded version, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna put up something to let you know about our November 30th event, our broadcast. It says, "What now? Trump's in office. Okay, now what? What do we do?"
Now what?
And I hope that you all will tune into that as well. Chief, man, thank you. Peace and black power, brother.
Peace and blessings, brother. Thank you very much,
sir.
Man. I appreciate the invite.
Sir. Thank you. And we'll see you on Sunday, good brother. Peace to the rest of you. Have a beautiful day, family.